the role of TE is critically important in ensuring that within your corporate environment, your campuses, you are energy efficient and not energy inefficient. Corbin works with them very closely. Corbin, you can make some additional comments before we turn it over to Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. T&E has been a huge partner of ours, and thank you, Brian, for attending. There's a lot of, as Ron mentioned, a lot of people think of, the solar, the batteries, and the EV charging aspects of, sustainability measures, but there's a lot more parts and pieces that go on to the overall grid to allow this to actually all come together. And T&E has great solutions that can really help implement that from a macro and micro standpoint. So thanks, Brian. I really appreciate you coming here and supporting us.
Thank you, Corbin. I appreciate both you and Ron for inviting us to be here. It's a very intriguing conversation, and we're happy to be able to support.
Hey, one other quick comment, just as a couple of people have mentioned, both Brian's presentation, the slides, as well as standalone videos, as well as all the previous sessions and great sessions to come. We're going to make sure all those are recorded, standalone separate videos for each session. So when you go to your colleagues and your facility manager and they say, you really need to learn more about TE, you could watch Brian's presentation. We'll separate them, as well as having all the slides available for downloading. Okay, back to you, Brian.
All right. Thank you again, both, and everybody for attending today. My name is Brian Townsend. I'm with TE Connectivity, and I'm the vertical account manager for the industrial division, which consists of many different elements, but I'm on the energy side. And what we do is we provide connectors for the grid, renewables, many different verticals that we'll go through, but primarily every connection counts. And at TE, that's what we do. We make connections. Okay, so just for the people new to the presentation or maybe not be familiar with TE as a company, we're made up of 3 different business segments, one being communications, data devices, very much a part of that. I'm part of the industrial division. That consists of aerospace and defense, industrial, which would be an OEM type of application where there's so many different connectors for every different type of electrical requirement out there. And we basically have our hands in so many different products. We make over 270 billion products. So the catalog is big. Medical, we're definitely involved with medical devices. And again, on the energy side, that's what we consist of. And that's what I'm here for today. Transportation is a big part of what we do as well, from the harnesses that we do for automobiles. Obviously, we're seeing a huge uptick with electrical vehicles and the different harnesses that those require, going to copper instead of aluminum, sensors, transportation, and application tooling. We're a worldwide company based we have 3 different segments: the Americas, EMEA, and our Pacific region as well, Asian Pacific market. But we serve to over 150 countries. And we're worldwide. Sustainability is a big part of what TE is doing, and we have many different plans according to that. But we go through the different products in which we have. TE has gone through many different acquisitions to make it the company that it is today. Crompton Instruments is doing all the digital metering, the analog instrumentation, current transformers, and relays. But you want to meter your substation, your performance of your equipment to make sure you're getting the most efficiency from that equipment. Utilux is a electrical connector and fittings brand that we have now merged into our RPG line through another acquisition. Bothrop is our surge arrestor protection. And when we're talking about equipment at substations or utility, even OEM equipment or manufacturing equipment, you want to protect that equipment so that it can continue to work and be efficient. And that is our surge arrestor technology right there. AMP, they're going to see that in our overhead product line. One Source stock sells a lot of it, but that is your wedge technology for all your overhead wires that you see outside. Simel is our connectors and fittings for substations. So That is a big part of what we do on the energy side. And Raychem, I would say, is the greatest acquisition that we've had as a company, because that's what I represent. Radiation technology, all your heat shrink, cold shrink fittings for everything that we do. And then Axicom. I brought this slide up just to show you the different verticals out there that which we represent. And we have an application to have a solution for any different type of vertical market that might be out there. Me personally, I'm very much involved in the solar and renewable side of the business. And we have about a 50% market share when it comes to our connectors types to go to that utility scale. We're seeing a huge uptick in residential type applications as well with solar. But you know, you have wind, you have offshore, you have onshore. And as Ron was saying, you know, those oil rigs, which we're involved in too, might be a wind farm one day. And we see a huge uptick in the demand and the environmental restrictions being lifted for offshore wind. So it is a big market that we see moving forward and something that we are very much concentrating on. We do a lot of power generation from nuclear, obviously the renewable side, all the way down to the substation. And what's most important throughout this is the reliability, the product technologies that TE has to make sure that these connections continue to work and that keeps the light on, let's say. Okay, but many different vertical markets that we have a solution to. And as a company, create a sustainable future. I brought this slide up because, you know, we just hit COVID 2 years ago. It's been crazy for all of us. It's a different world in which we live in. And when the COVID first hit, there was a supply chain shortage for protection face masks. Our employees took the weekends. We made plastic face masks that we donated over 250,000 to local hospitals and elderly facilities, to where the people that got them, the doctors and the staff at the point, said, these are the best we've had. You guys really need to go into the market and start manufacturing these. And so we're actually looking into that, is getting outside of connectors and just making face masks. But we do have a sustainability infrastructure in place at TE Connectivity. And it starts within before we can promote it to our customers. And in the end, what are we doing to provide sustainability? What value do we add to our customers to make sure that their product is correct, their product is installed correctly, their product is going to continue to work and not have an outage? When you're talking about a power plant, if you have a 2-hour outage due to a failure, that is hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss by not producing that energy, selling back to the grid. Renewables are privately owned, selling to the larger utility companies. And if they're not producing power, they're not making money. So first, it starts within TE Connectivity. And this is a quote from our CEO, Terrence Curtin. And I think what's most important here, it's proof of concept that sustainability isn't something we do, it's who we are. We have a corporate responsibility report that we publish. It's online. You can find it wherever. This is the link here within our website, but primarily it concentrates on the different aspects of sustainability, what we're doing as a company internally to then create the best products that we can and promote sustainability. This is the one slide from the 86-page document on our corporate responsibility report, but I thought this one was the most important. Product creation. TE spends billions of dollars a year. I think we spend a lot of money on technology development, continuing to develop the products that have continued to last throughout time to work even better. The environment's changing. It's getting more harsh environments. So what used to work maybe before isn't necessarily working today, and TE continues to develop the best products that we can. UV protection, pollutant protection, harsh environment protection. And it starts with providing the best product creation that we can. We have over 8,000 engineers on staff, 80,000 employees, and each employee is empowered to give feedback, provide growth within the company. Supply chain is a huge issue for us right now throughout the world, really, and every manufacturer is going through that. So partnering with our supply chain is a huge part of our sustainability. We talked about reduction of water and reduction of waste earlier in the presentation, and we are definitely concentrating on that. Our goal is to reduce water consumption by 50% by 2030. Reduce our carbon footprint by our greenhouse gas. Zero accidents within the staff and all that stuff. And this is just our sustainability. And so what are we doing at TE now to bring this to our customers? And that's by providing the best products that we can. We have cable accessories that go, which is standard for solar and wind, up to 35 kV, up to 69 kV. Our substation fittings and bus bar connectors, right? Installation and protection. If we want to have longevity of a product and we want that substation to keep working, we're going to touch base on this in more detail, because I feel this to be the most important part of what we're doing with wildlife asset protection, protecting the grid, making sure that the energy continues to flow. Right now, technology is powered through the cloud. And if the cloud goes down, technology goes down. And we work with all the major data center people out there, AWS, Google, Facebook, Apple, you name it, hand in hand to make sure that we are providing the best product, installation practices, and services that we can. We provide an in-depth training to make sure that there is no failure at these locations. The biggest problem that you're going to have with a failure with the connector is partial discharge. And we contain that by providing the best certification and training that we can in the field. And then metering. You want to meter your devices to make sure that they're working accurately. Just to go into a little overview, 10,000-foot view of the products themselves. Switchgear equipment is the most important. We have the surge arresters, as we discussed earlier, that protects that equipment from lightning strikes, power surges. You want to make sure that your equipment's protected, because it is expensive stuff too, but most importantly, you want to keep the power on. Raychem is a company which we purchased through acquisition. Heat shrink technology is something that we invented, and it's proven to be the most rigid and best connector out there through time. I mean, it's changed, but I guess you would call it, the base recipe hasn't really changed though. We continue to develop the process of it, but it's a proven technology. Joints and splices and terminations, and that primarily makes up what we do with Raychem side of the TE business. Connectors and fittings, we see a lot of people going to the shear bolt connector, particularly in the wind farm, safety being a big reason for it. You're climbing up in a tower, you don't want to have a 100-pound tool to crimp down a lug, so shear bolts is very popular. We have our wedge connectors, which is our amp line, grounding and protection. And then our IPC connectors, we're seeing a big success with this in the solar fields by reducing the amount of inverters required, or combiner boxes required within the solar field by using our internal piercing connectors. And then our wildlife asset protection. If we're talking sustainability, the most important part is protecting the equipment. And we have bus bar tape, tubes, and wildlife asset protection. You have raptor guards, squirrel guards, snake guards. You see videos out there all the time, maybe of birds hanging on a wire, collapsing the wire and causing a shortage. I live in California. We shut the power off when it gets windy, because if a power line fails, it's going to cause a fire. So we go to the job sites themselves. I'm going to go into a case study before I get ahead of myself here. So there was a problem in Central California where a crow had nested itself on a crossbar where the terminations were very close in proximity. And that crow either turned its body and connected beak to tail or wingspan to wingspan and caused a failure and a fire. That fire in total with the outage was an $8 million loss. And I believe it was just $80,000 of wildlife asset protection material that TE engineers and product specialists went out to the site, reviewed their schematics of the substation and the terminations, the proximity of them, and we designed a solution for them to protect that site moving forward. Clearway Energy was a customer. They've been adopted to go through and do that to all their substations. They saw the value in protecting their system. Not only did it cause a fire, but that bird is no more. We can't really know what happened because that bird's in, who knows where that thing is now. But what we do as a service of TE connectivity is a product specialist will go to a site. We could even take renderings of pictures of a substation. And what we do is we make a digital rendering of what we can do to protect your system with different type of products, cover the insulators, station posts, connectors, whatever it might be, from anything like this ever happening again. EDF just recently sent us 12 different substations. Within a month's time, we had engineered a complete solution for them to go out and put wildlife asset protection into the west portion of their substations. And again, this is due to wildlife getting in, burrowing through the wire. They love the polymers of the jackets on cables. It's soft on their teeth. They eat it and they cause failures throughout. I have a motorhome. If, God forbid a rat gets in there and eats the cables, but I'm always fearful of that and protect it myself, right? And that's what we do as a company. One thing that we talked about a lot that Corbin's brought up is EV charging. We talk about battery energy storage. And I believe this to be a big market moving forward. Everybody wants to be producing nothing but electric cars moving forward. BP has just recently partnered with Volkswagen in Europe to do their vehicle charging systems. So gas companies, Veeder-Root, one of the largest pump manufacturers out there, is getting into electrical vehicle charging. And so we at TE is, where do we play in something like this? And I feel it's the microgrid. You're going to have rural locations that aren't going to have the power necessary. So can we develop a sustainable charging system, whether it be solar, wind farm? You have just a little windmill standing besides a vehicle storage system, vehicle energy charging system. And then how do you contain that energy? Battery energy storage is a big market right now. There's a lot of trade shows going on just for that particular market. And we're something that we are definitely a part of, grounding the system, providing the connectors for the system, and working with engineers to provide the best solutions and most efficient solutions out there. And what can we do as a company to support these giant utility farms that we're a big part of to create more energy storage at these locations to feed back into the grid now as well? We have, when these energy solar, wind, utility scale farms went up, their contracts were for daytime on the solar side because there is no sun at nighttime. So what we're seeing is a major in production for battery energy storage at these solar fields so that they can continue to feed into the system, which we're going to need for these battery energy storage and the electrical vehicle charging stations. Yes, sir. Thank you, Ron. Particularly it's the most efficient and best way to do this is by understanding how to properly terminate the cables. When you're dealing with high voltage cables, it's very dangerous. You're going to have a lot of failure if the semicon on the cable is not cut back correctly, which would then causes partial discharge. That partial discharge can create an explosion because you're talking about a lot of power here. And if that product fails, it can cause a fire. It will damage the system around it. And TE has the services to go out and train the field people on how to properly terminate the cables. We have seminars that we have back at our plant in Fuquay Arena. We travel to different locations to meet with the people and the contractors involved to make sure that the work is being done correctly. There's many specs that require this to be done on these jobs as well, and we're there to support.
And that's what's so great too, Brian. 'Cause I mean, like, especially with, an energy storage and critical infrastructure, we have facilities that rely on this reserve of power. And so there's any kind of discharge or any type of power influx that is off a little bit, that could ruin whole batches for manufacturers, but also for power grids. So those terminations and those connectors that you guys provide for the reliability is huge for this growing market.